Hello and welcome everyone. Hello and welcome everyone to the marketing webinar or pre-enrollment webinar on sustainable finance and investing. I'm going to wait a few more seconds because I know you're still trying to get in, and we get started in a few moments. So sustainable finance and investing, you're in the right place. This is going to be a session with Professor Michael Wilkins. So you'll hear from faculty. We'll talk about the program. We'll talk about what you can learn, the logistics of it as well. So let me just see in a moment. All right. So as I always joke, the Zoom security is not so bad as people think because we are carding everybody at the door, making sure you're at the right place. So sustainable finance and investing. So before we get going, though, it would be great to find out from you, where are you connecting from and what brought you to this webinar? So if you could type it up in the chat, that would be great. And of course, the best thing to do is obviously pick everyone as well, so everybody else can see it. And so let me see. Anybody from London? That's an obvious choice, right? Okay, so where are you connecting from? Let us know. I see Deepika, Jaideep, Dishafa. Let us know. Michael from South Ken, obviously. Jaideep from India. Okay, Deepika as well. So you see the picture on the right side of the slide, at least from my perspective, that's Imperial campus in South Kensington in London. All right, so if you also think about why you are here, what brought you to here, that would be great. So I see Tishafa as well, CEO of Engineering based in London. Our business is in Africa. We are in renewable energy and just want to improve my knowledge. Perfect, perfect. So Deepika, Jaideep, any other comments? What sort of business are you in? All right, you can let us know when you're ready. That's fine. So what we're going to talk about today is obviously Imperial College London, the business school. We're going to talk about program faculty. Michael's here with us. As I said, we'll talk a little bit about what's in the modules, what you can expect. And then also from learner's perspective, what you need to do to earn a certificate, what does that mean? And any questions you might have around this. So my name is Rudolf or Rudi Falad. I've been a program leader or learning facilitator on a number of Imperial courses, and we have Michael with us, who is an executive director and professor of practice at the Imperial College Business School. So I'll let him introduce himself in a second. But what is the Imperial College? So hopefully you know about the school because you're already here. But one important thing is it is, or Imperial College Business School is part of Imperial College London. And Imperial College London is well known as a global leader in merging science and technology. And the business school adds to this, right? So it's a mix of business, technology, and entrepreneurial mindset that you see throughout all the courses from Imperial. And Imperial also ranks among the top business schools in Europe and worldwide consistently, right? The important thing is consistently as well. So you can expect the technology angle, entrepreneurship, and of course, being practical and hands-on, and therefore, just like you are in business, senior leaders that you are, right? Now, why are we here? We're going to talk about sustainable finance, responsible investing. A lot of people talk about this. And I think the great thing about a program like this is that Michael is, first of all, an expert on this with this many years of experience of investing and advising investors, but also focusing especially on sustainability, but also because the faculty of Imperial is balanced, right? And it's unbiased. So a lot of publications and a lot of reporting and maybe greenwashing going on in the world. And this is where this program will help you to navigate through all of this. And this is great for investment professionals, asset managers, and consultants alike, And why we're here also is not only to cut through the noise, but it's obvious that this is a great investment opportunity as well. Whether you look at the bonds, right? People call it sustainable or green bonds. When you look at ESG mandated tracks, if you're an asset manager, all of this is growing, and growing, right? And numbers are huge. However, maybe there are still a lot that is not fully understood when it comes to sustainable finance and investing, and that's why you get some navigation tools from us. So, as I already mentioned, this program is great if you are an investment manager, institutional investor, or an investment banker looking for investment strategies that take into account the ESG goals, right? So environmental, social, and governance goals. Also, related to this are asset managers and finance managers, right? Many of your companies, even though you are not in an investment management business, you are a corporate that produces X, Y, and Z products. Many of the companies have ESG goals, and there is more and more pressure from all stakeholders, including the public, to make the sustainable investing and sustainable practices transparent. Consultants, of course, they need to help their clients with those sort of topics, which, as I said, there is a lot of unclarity, and perhaps still, even though it's a mainstream topic, there is a lot of divergence about what this really means, sustainable investing or sustainable finance. So here I hand over to Michael. You can hear an introduction from him, and then he will introduce his colleagues on the program, and of course we'll talk about what you can expect in the course or during the course. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Just make sure that you select all attendees, and I might have to read them out loud, not because I love to listen to myself, but that's because if you are watching this from a recording, you don't see the chat, so that you can follow the conversation. I'll repeat the questions. But welcome, Michael. Eager to hear from you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Rudy. I hope you can hear me well, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Mike Wilkins, sometimes known as Michael for official purposes. My role is the Executive Director of the Centre for Climate Finance and Investment at Imperial College in London. But I also have another job. I have two jobs in one. I'm also a Professor of Practice in the business school, Imperial College, where I teach sustainable finance and investment on the MBA program and also on the finance MSc programs. So I'm a professor for postgraduates, as well as leading the research center known as the CCFI. So that's my role at Imperial. But before I joined Imperial back in early 2022, I spent 28 years working for S&P Global, which is a multinational credit rating agency and data and information company. I'm sure most of you have heard of S&P, if not at least the S&P 500 index, which is well famous. But also I'm sure you've heard of S&P ratings, credit ratings. So that's the division that I was involved in when I was at S&P for nearly 30 years. And I was a specialist in infrastructure finance to start with during my career at S&P. And then I headed up the infrastructure team in Europe. I spent some time in Australia and in Southeast Asia, in the offices there in Melbourne and Hong Kong. And then after a while, I moved from focusing on infrastructure and project finance to looking at environmental and climate change risk, and how environmental and climate risk have an impact on credit quality and how it impacts credit ratings. So that was around 10 to 15 years ago. And since then, really, I've never looked back. I've been focusing on sustainability, on ESG, on climate change and climate finance ever since. To the point where I set up the sustainable finance team at S&P Ratings back in 2017, launched a number of products for the debt markets, including the green evaluation and also the ESG evaluation. And then became Global Head of Research for S&P Global Ratings in Sustainable Finance up until the end of 2021. And then I joined Imperial College to head up the CCFI and become Professor of Practice, which is my current role. So that's my background. I have very much been involved in designing the course which we're talking about today, the Sustainable Finance and Investment course. It is very much modeled on the program which I teach to my MBA students and my Masters of Finance students, the overarching framework, as well as some of the content is the same, but it's obviously condensed into a 6-week program. So just to highlight the fact that a lot of the learning that's being given to the postgrads at Imperial College here in London in person has been used as the basis for this online course. So it's very much linked to that program and very much feeds from the information and content and the faculty involved in that program as well. So maybe we could move on to the faculty who are involved, just to introduce some of them. So it's actually a pleasure for me to introduce this, because all members of the faculty who are on this course are actually my colleagues at the Centre for Climate Finance and Investment. So they all work in my team. So including here, you see in front of you, Eva Kochi. She's actually a teaching fellow at the business school, but is also a member of the CCFI. She's a postdoc researcher who specializes in sustainable finance. And she has just completed, well, about a year ago, her PhD at King's College, and now works teaching sustainable finance and corporate finance to postgrads. Before that, she worked in fixed income and asset management as a financial advisor. So her area of speciality is really how companies are engaged in sustainable finance, and also how sustainable finance is actually making an impact through investments and risk management decision making. So that's Eva. Now, Eva is responsible for leading the module on sustainable finance regulation and policy, which is the second module. So if we move on to the next slide, thank you. So just introduce a couple of the other faculties members involved in this course. So Anna Ostrovnaya, as she's known, is also in my team. She's a senior teaching fellow at the business school and also a senior researcher at the CCFI. Anna's got over 10 years of experience working in investment banking and commodity trading. She worked for Deutsche Bank for a number of years. So comes to us with industry experience from the finance community. And while at Imperial, she's been involved in a variety of research streams, including looking at carbon pricing, carbon markets, transition risk, policy and regulation, as well as looking at the capital markets and how they've embraced sustainability. So Anna is the leader for Module 3, which is focused on sustainable finance instruments and looking at things like green bonds and sustainability-linked bonds and loans. So we'll talk about that in a second. So that's Anna. And then Pernilla Holterdal is the leader for the 4th module. So Pernilla is another member of my team, and she's a research fellow and focuses on nature investing and also how nature is integrated into climate and agriculture, and is an expert in that field, having spent many years working for the Norwegian company Cicero Shades of Green, where she was a senior member there. And also she runs her own environmental consultancy for sustainable finance market. So she's very experienced in green bonds and nature investing. And she leads our nature research work stream, which looks at things like natural capital and biodiversity and how that is integrated into investment decision making. So she leads the module number 4, which is on nature investing. And then last but not least, the 5th module is actually led by myself, which is on Southeast Asia. So as well as the faculty members who I've just introduced, there are a number of guest speakers throughout the course who have been specially selected to provide deep insight from industry, so real life experience, real at-the-face experience of how people are investing in sustainable products, how regulation and policy is impacting the markets and investors, and also specifically on looking at the region which we're focusing in on, which is Southeast Asia, as an example of an emerging market and how sustainable finance has evolved in that area. So just a couple of examples of some of the guests. So Beth Burks, a former colleague of mine from S&P Global. She's a director of the sustainable finance team there, and Beth has a very deep experience in looking at sustainable finance instruments, looking at ratings and ESG scores, and also looking at specific environmental risks, including water, which is a specialty of hers. Other people who are invited as guests, just to pick a few out at random here. Tonia Plakotnick is a regulation and policy expert currently working at NatWest Markets in London, where she heads up climate and ESG capital markets. Tonia has spent many years working for the Association of Finance and Markets in Europe, AFME, and is a good contact of mine from those days. And she is interviewed in the course about how policy and regulation is evolving and how that's actually impacting investors and also lenders to the sustainable finance marketplace. Other guest speakers include Simone Utermark, who's a director at the ICMA, or the International Capital Markets Association, where she leads up sustainable finance. And Simone also talks on the program about how the sustainable finance debt markets has evolved, and how ICMA, or ICRA, as it's sometimes known, is now the leading provider of guidelines for green bonds, social bonds, and sustainability-linked instruments, amongst others. So she talks through all those new guidelines and principles, which are now pretty much standard practice for the investment community to follow, in terms of ensuring that there is discipline and avoiding sort of pitfalls such as greenwashing. So that's something which Simone talks about in depth during the course. Other guest speakers include Jan Arends, who talks about carbon markets, and Phoebe Scott, who talks about nature investing. Phoebe is an alumna from Imperial College, where she studied climate change management and finance, and is now working for climate asset management, looking at putting together specific funds for investing in nature. So that's, again, very much practical insight into how these instruments are put together and what investors are actually looking for. And finally, I think it's worth mentioning Priya Bellino, currently working at SMBC in Singapore as head of ESG solutions. And Priya, again, a good friend of Imperial's, helped us with many research projects, and also is involved with our activities in the Singapore Green Finance Centre, which Imperial College co-manages. So we have a lot of experience in looking at Southeast Asia, hence focusing on that region as an example of how sustainable finance is impacting developing and emerging markets. So we can move on to the next one. So the program itself is fairly comprehensive in terms of what it covers, but essentially what we are trying to do is to ensure that the participants are able to evaluate the potential impact of sustainability trends and also developments of financial performance, while considering how these give positive contributions to society and the environment. So that's very much a background foundation part of the course, which is covered in the first module. The second module covers a lot about sustainable investment products. So it's developing an understanding of those and how they interface with the capital markets. So really going into sort of high finance space. The third area looks at the policy areas and policy drivers, as well as the regulatory frameworks, which are very fast moving and evolving very quickly across the world. But Europe has been at the forefront of this, but we're now seeing regulation being sped up in regions such as Southeast Asia and the US. So it's very much an evolving and fast-moving dynamic landscape, which needs to be tracked very carefully. We also go into the issue around scoring and assessing various sustainable finance products and looking at real-life case studies, which we'll come back to in a second. And then finally, looking at emerging markets. So regions such as Southeast Asia and Africa are at the forefront of sustainable finance. So it's very important that we don't just focus on OECD countries and Europe and the US, but also look at Southeast Asia, look at Africa, look at South America, and try and establish what the trends are in those regions. So those are the key takeaways. If you go to the next slide, please. So I've given you a hint already about the way that the program is set up. It's split into 5 modules. The first module is led by me, where we look at the key basics and foundations to sustainable finance, exploring how sustainability has evolved and plays a significant role in business and finance and also in investment. Look at the evolution of various standards and guidelines such as the Sustainable Development Goals, and also look at how corporations are changing their behavior as a result of the focus of the investment community in ESG and sustainability. And there's a very insightful talk by one of the guest speakers, Hugh Whelan, who's the founder of Responsible Investor magazine, in that module. The second module, which is around policy and regulation, and that's led by my colleague Eva Kochi, as I said earlier. So this is really looking at the key drivers behind sustainability reporting, regulatory and policy frameworks, and how that is impacting organizations and the rules that need to be met and compliance requirements. And this is where there's an inclusion of a guest interview with Tonia Plakotnik from NatWest Markets, who's an expert in the field. The third module is led by Anna Ostrovnaya, looking at sustainable finance markets and instruments, and includes an interview with Simona Utermark from ICMA. So this is an investigation into various different types of debt instruments and also funds, such as green bonds, social bonds, transition bonds, understanding the risks of investing in such instruments, such as greenwashing, and also the governance frameworks that are important to underpin the credibility behind them. And bearing in mind, this is a very, very strongly dynamic and growth market, which is, now somewhere in the region of $1 trillion of outstanding sustainability and green bond debt in the market. So it's a very important area to understand in capital markets. So moving on to module 4, the next slide. That focuses on nature and is led by Pernilla Hotedal from my team at the CCFI. And Pernilla looks at how nature and the economy is interdependent, looking at how depletion of nature and natural resources is having a negative impact on the global economy, as well as having social impacts, and how investments by the public and private sector can make a difference to this, and what type of investments are most attractive, and how those are structured, and how they interplay with various different market structures, such as the carbon markets, voluntary and compliance. So this is a fast-moving and up-and-coming area. So nature-based biodiversity and the interplay with agriculture and food security is a very important area to understand if you're trying to get into the world of sustainable finance. And then the final module, which is led by me, is looking at all these aspects that we've learned in the previous 4 modules, but to bring them together within the context of Southeast Asia. And this is helped by the interview with Priya Bellino, Priya from SMBC in Singapore, who gives her expertise and insight in terms of how Southeast Asia is adapting to a fast-moving regulatory policy framework for that area, and the specific challenges that corporates and banks and governments in Southeast Asia face in terms of trying to attract sustainable finance and also meet net zero targets, and ensuring that they reduce their emissions to meet the requirements of targets set in the Paris Agreement. So we'll talk about Paris Agreement and targets within the first part of the course as well. So that's essentially how the course is structured in those 5 modules, and they're very much interfaced with each other. And then to help understand these in terms of real-life examples, there's a number of case studies which are provided within the playbook. I'll come back to that in a second, including looking at the Bank of England and how they've looked at climate stress testing models. And this is part of the prudential regulation framework for banks to ensure that they have sufficient capital to withstand future stresses from climate change, such as the impacts of wildfires and droughts and floods, which are having an impact on property prices and on bank lending. So that's the Bank of England case study. World Bank looking at nature investment, which is very much part of the World Bank's remit, especially in emerging markets. And then looking specifically at one corporation, Coca-Cola, and looking at in detail at reporting requirements of sustainability. We go into some depth in terms of how a company needs to do this, what are the tools available to ensure compliance with sustainability reporting standards, and how those differ from standard financial reporting disclosure requirements. So those are the case studies that you find in the playbook, and there are exercises based around that. The playbook in which these occur are part of this course. So this playbook gives you a number of exercises, readings, videos, case studies, as well as examples to help illustrate the learnings that you will get in each of the modules. So the idea is that when you listen to the videos and you look at the background reading, when you go to the playbook and you go through the exercises in the playbook, and it helps embed the learning that you picked up from the videos and the reading. So it's tried to make it as a multi-faceted learning experience as possible. And the whole course itself is, as I said, being designed by me and presented by me and my colleagues. We're all members of the Centre for Climate Finance and Investment, the CCFI, and that is very much a part of Imperial College Business School, which is focused on sustainable finance. We are co-managers of the Singapore Green Finance Centre. We work with a number of financial institutions, so we're very much at the forefront of looking at capital markets instruments and the practical solutions which can be brought by research from the academic side to this area. So there's no better part of Imperial College to actually present this course, in my opinion.
And here are a couple of examples. So video lectures is one, right? So you should go through the material. That means really the video lectures when they are released, whenever it suits you, right? Some people do it before work, some people do it after work, over the weekend, whichever way suits you. But obviously it's good not to procrastinate, because the next week there will be more videos, right? So these are the lectures, but the live sessions are meant for discussion after you have already seen the lectures and went through the assignments and maybe have some questions. So you have different views, so you want to dive into particular topics with the faculty, and we can discuss those and cover those. Case studies, we were just talking about the examples, so this is meant to be as practical as it gets. That's why we talk about the real life companies. I did mention that you will be able to connect with your classmates virtually, so there'll be networking opportunities. We'll try to facilitate that as much as we can. And of course, also you will have the guest speakers as well. And the important thing is that you will always have a learning facilitator to help you with content-related questions. Or also you will have a program support team that will help you with admin questions or any technical issues. So you won't be left alone, right? So this is not like I'm going to download some videos and nobody will ever talk to me. Here, there is a huge team to support you so that you get the best out of it and you learn most. So Tishafa says, I already signed up and I received an email to change my password, but I'm on another course. Do I need to change my password, or I just need to wait for the start of this course? Well, if you sign up and paid, then you can log in once the course is live. I think this course starts on September 21st. So I would expect that the course is not available yet for you to join. but just keep an eye out for your email, and once it's ready, then you can join. So, but it won't open before September 21st. All right. So one other thing is, and some people care about it a lot, and I understand others, maybe they care about the content only, but I would really advise you, if you put that much effort into this, let's also get the certificate, right? And people then show the certificate on their CV or resume, or they show it on LinkedIn, and this is what will be the outcome of your course, right? So you will get the digital certificate that you completed this program, Sustainable Finance in Investing, Unlocking Global Investment Strategies, and you can share it with others as well. All right. So if you also need more time to think about this, you want to discuss this a bit more, my colleague Deepika put the link in the chat, and you can find the time to speak to an advisor, and you can ask them about the program. Of course, once you connect, so you see, when you go to the website, you can click on the link, and you can either schedule a call with an advisor, download the brochure, and somebody will follow up with you in any case. But I think the best thing is to download the brochure, have a look around, maybe ask some questions still today, and then if still you have questions, please then speak to an advisor, and then hopefully you have everything in order for you to make a decision. And the course starts soon enough on September 21st. A couple of other things which are typically asked, like how much time does this take, right? It's 6 weeks program. We said 5 weeks of content plus 1 week before for orientation, 4 to 6 hours of effort for you. That obviously depends how deep you want to go. We'll give you some additional materials as well, and you can go as deep as you want on particular topics, but typically we think it's 4 to 6 hours per week. And otherwise it's all online, so there won't be necessarily any events on the campus, but sometimes people find this useful, and if there are more than a handful of people in the same city, they meet as well. So that's on you. That's up to you as well. If you want to network outside of the platform, I think first of all you have enough opportunities within the platform. But if you want to, you can also set up a LinkedIn group. Some people do this and will promote this during the office hours or live sessions, or on a discussion forum as well. But this is an opportunity for you to ask questions, so please don't hesitate. Any questions for Michael? So I have a question here from Anonymous. Is there any extension given for submission of assignments? Yes, yes, there is. Basically, what we do is if you are late by a week, it still counts towards your certification, but you don't get the feedback from your learning facilitator. And if you need more time than this, then you can reach out to program support and work something out. So, as I said, we understand that you are busy professionals, things can happen, and the business trumps everything. But on the other hand, if you keep on postponing each and every assignment, then you will never finish. So we need to find some balance here. So any questions for Michael?
Rudy, while people are thinking about their final questions, just to highlight one aspect of this course is that there is a opportunity to have a live session with faculty, which is scheduled, I think, somewhere in the middle of the program. So myself, together with my colleagues, Eva, Anna, Pernilla, will be available to have a session discussing the latest trends in sustainable finance, and having a chat with you who have enrolled on the course and answering your questions, which may have come up during your learnings in the previous modules. So those are the live webinars that are listed there, top center.
Absolutely, and I assume there will be, of course, live office hours with the learning facilitator on a weekly basis as well. So as I said, you won't be left alone, right? You just download the videos and that's all. You will be able to participate. So here's a great question. Why are sustainability and finance merging together? How does sustainability actually has had an impact on financial community?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a very long answer to that question, which I won't go into now. But I think the short answer is basically that over the past, I said 20, maybe 30 years, there's been a realization within the business and finance community that the standard paradigm of economic growth and financing economic growth was no longer viable in terms of achieving, if I use the term loosely, a sustainable future for people, planet, and prosperity. Those 3 Ps that you often hear about: people, planet, and prosperity. So that realization was backed up by scientific evidence that if the world continued to grow the way it was growing, consume resources, and operate in the standard sort of framework of capitalism, then there would be a full utilization of all resources, and also that there would be problems related to future future existence, to put it in stark terms. So that, there's scientific evidence to suggest that we can't go beyond our planetary boundaries, that, there's the need to internalize the so-called externalities, such as the emission of greenhouse gas emissions, which have never been priced into standard financial and economic models. And all this thinking has evolved over the past 20 to 30 years to the point where it was a realization that there needs to be a fundamental change in the way that business operated, but not only the operation and functioning of business, but also how it was financed, and that the finances needed to reflect that there need to be new goals and targets which took sustainability into account, and that's the origins of sustainable finance, and that really took off to a major extent in 2015. When the Paris Agreement was signed. And the Paris Agreement is a landmark agreement committing all countries in the world to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions to ensure that global warming reached no more than 2 degrees and closer to 1.5 degrees by the turn of this century. And that was to avert cataclysmic climate change impact on the planet. So that agreement in Paris in 2015 was fundamental in pivoting companies, businesses, but also the world of finance towards more sustainable goals, more sustainable finance methods, and also more sustainable investment techniques. So that's how it all came about. But really, since 2015, the integration of reduction in greenhouse gases, the transition to net zero, making sure that there's no more emissions put into the atmosphere than can be absorbed, to achieve a zero or neutral implication for carbon. And that all tied into a realization in a much broader sense around the impact that humans were having on the planet in terms of degrading nature, impact on biodiversity and pollution, etc. And that all rolled into this whole sustainable finance movement, which is now very much alive and active. So that's the somewhat abbreviated answer.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Michael. Here's another question for Bernardine. He's asking if someone without knowledge in finance or economics be able to follow this course.
Yeah, I would say that you would need to have a basic understanding of finance and economics to get the most out of this course. Otherwise, there may be some terms and terminology and concepts which may be somewhat maybe abstract. Although we do go at great lengths to explain everything, every acronym is spelled out in full, and there's glossaries provided to explain the terms that are used. But I think having just a basic understanding of the world of finance and economics, I think, will be helpful.
Okay. So officially, there are no prerequisites, but as Michael said, of course, you would get a head start if you know the key concepts or the vocabulary of the finance world, but it's not meant to be super technical, right, Michael?
Correct, yeah. It's not super technical. You don't need to have a PhD in mathematics to be able to do this. It is a fairly practical course applied and looking at real life examples of what's happening in the market. So it's more really a course based on what's really happening in the real world rather than sort of abstract theory or concepts.
Okay. So don't hesitate, please raise your questions. In the meantime, I have one for you, Michael, because you know what I like about taking courses like this that I took as well is that the faculty is really balanced and unbiased, right? Because a lot of the times when you read about something on the internet, you then figure out that actually this is some sort of undisclosed endorsement or by a loaded view, and here we get the real truth, right? So when you are a retail investor, say, and then you are trying to pick funds, and maybe your wealth manager nowadays shows this, or your private bank or asset manager, they show you the different funds. And in the last few years, there was another column added to these sort of overviews, right? They talked about what is this fund about, and what is the performance and the fees. And now they say the ESG aware, ESG green, things like this. But I think every asset manager or a bank has a different way of looking at these things. So maybe when you look at the what HSBC would tell you or some other bank, the rating of a certain stock would be quite different. So are we anywhere near to bringing more transparency to reporting on ESG ratings, or not yet? Are we converging into something we can rely on, and we don't need to study the fine print of everyone else, every bank that is out there talking about this?
Yes, that's a good question, and I think the simple answer to that is yes, we are. We're much closer to harmonization and greater consistency and coherence in ESG standards and sustainability standards. And by the way, I use the term sustainability and ESG interchangeably, but it, essentially means the same thing. Just an example of that, only a few weeks ago, the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, sorry, yet another acronym. You'll get used to acronyms if you do the course. But the ISSB launched its first 2 sustainability reporting standards. Now, you may think, well, why is that important? It's important because prior to the ISSB having these reporting standards, and this is for mainstream financial reporting, by the way. So before these were released, there was, I don't know how many, maybe 20, 30 different reporting standards for sustainability. And there was SASB, the GRI, and many, many others. So now these have all been converged and to include things like the TCFD, which is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, which I was involved in personally. These have all been brought together under one umbrella, under the ISSB, which is part of the mainstream standards for accounting reporting. So I think that's a major breakthrough. And also you make a reference to ESG ratings or sustainability ratings. There is now a lot more emphasis by regulators to ensure that there's good governance and practice in terms of how these ratings are produced and how they're communicated, and transparency around goes into them. I personally was on the Code of Conduct working group for the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, which last month produced its draft Code of Conduct for ESG ratings and data, which will be put into force later on this year in September. So that's just one example of how the industry is now being under greater scrutiny by supervisory bodies, which I think is a good thing, because it will bring not just greater transparency, but also confidence in the market, which has been somewhat marred by criticism of issues such as greenwashing and also lack of consistency between the different types of ratings. And that's something which has led to investors thinking, really, is this a mature enough market for me to move into with confidence? And I think this evolution of regulatory standards, consistency, as well as the reporting by the ISSB, will help give greater confidence to investors and capital markets that there is actually a solid foundation underpinning sustainable finance.
Perfect. So at least, you know, the future is bright.
Indeed. Well, it's brighter, at least.
Brighter, yes. Yes, now that we are still on the sustainability topic is not necessarily bright. There's still a lot of work to do, right?
There's still a lot of work to do, yeah, but we're moving in the right direction and also at a faster pace, which is necessary.
Okay. So any other questions from participants? So I have a full, you know, Christmas bag of questions. But it's for you to ask questions, right? Bernardine is asking if you have any book to recommend to read, I guess, on that topic, right? Sustainability.
Yeah, it depends on what type of level of reading you want. If you want something which is an introduction, then you know there's a good book which is written by a couple of Dutch academics, Willem Schremeder and Dirk Schoenmaker, and that book's called The Principles of Sustainable Finance, published by OUP, Oxford University Press, in 2019. And that's the set text which I use for my MBA and finance master's program. So Principles of Sustainable Finance by Schremeder and Schoenmaker is a good reference book. But if you want something a little bit more, I suppose, high level to explaining the sort of challenges being faced by the world in terms of, you know, moving to net zero and what that means for the world of finance. There are many books, but one which I'm currently looking through at the moment is a book called 5 Times Faster by an author called Simon Sharp. So Simon Sharp was a climate change negotiator for the UK government, and now is an independent consultant. But he wrote this book, 5 Times Faster, which was published in April this year. So it's very fresh, very new, talking about how everything needs to be done 5 times faster to meet the global goals of decarbonisation and meeting the Paris Agreement targets. And I think in coming to that conclusion, there's a lot of good background information about how sustainable finance can help achieve that. So that's just a couple of recommendations.
Okay, we'll try to find the links and we'll put it in the chat before we sign off. No worries.
Yeah.
So Principles of Sustainable Finance and 5
times faster.
5 times faster, because a lot of people in the startup world talk about 10 times. So this one's 5 times. That's good enough when it comes to sustainable issues because they're so complex.
Yep.
No worries, Bernardine. You're doing great. That's what you should do. Ask many questions. Anyone else? So otherwise, please look in the chat. Those program support send you a link there, so you can book a time with an advisor to talk about it a bit more individually if you like. Or you can go to this link that you see on the slides, and you can download the brochure and think about it, read it a little bit more. So Deepika is again repeating the link. So this is the time that you can book to speak to an advisor, or you can apply for the program. In other words, you get the brochure and you can read about what we talked about today. Hopefully you found this interesting and insightful. I think this is a very, very hot topic. And as it is a new topic, it requires some help getting more clarity on this, right? And getting more clarity from experts and experts that are unbiased. So Michael and his teams put this great program together with this in mind. Any other final questions? Otherwise, I'll put the links to the books in the chat, and you can still have a look at the link here to sign up or book time with an advisor. Okay, here is one. Any other final questions? No, I think we're good, Michael. So I'll just post the other one as well. So principles of sustainable finance. And if you can check the time that suits you, talk to an advisor, that would be great. And hopefully we'll see you participating in this program because there's so much work and so much insight that went into this, jam-packed into 5+1 week. So after this, you'll be able to talk about this more confidently and maybe call out some people on some greenwashing as well, right? So thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers.